So I will say, let's begin. Thank you everybody for being here. I will I will speak firstly in Romanian, then I will add some English and then again Romanian. Vă mulțumesc tuturor că sunteți alături de noi.
Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the fourth edition of the annual meeting we organize. For the beginning, I will make some technical announcements, namely the conference is being recorded, meaning that by attending, you accept GDPR conditions and will upload online the conference so that later on it can be listened to, because this event is pertaining to information and education. I also want to let you know that you can listen to the conference according to the floor, English or Romanian, or you can select either English or Romanian as you have interpretation available. Zoom allows for interpretation and you have the buttons to listen according to the language of your choice. I will repeat it in English to make sure that everybody has access to translation, and then we'll start with the conference.
For being here. First of all, some technical announcements. This conference is recorded because we want to have it online after the event for other people to be able to see what was discussed here. Therefore, for being here, you are actually giving your support with the GDPR regulation. Also, it's important to know that the conference is translated. So if you hear Romanian, you can choose to hear in English. If you need, you'll find the interpretation button in Zoom, and you can hear our translator telling you what is discussed in Romanian. That's it with the technical part. I will switch again to Romanian. It's very hard to do that. I will explain the concept of our event, and then we'll go further with the activities.
So the conference, ASOP conference of this year, is on a general topic of trees here and now, starting from the idea of the landscape architects in Spain had in terms of approaching landscape here and now, with the emergency to act as fast as possible in order to tackle with the climate change and everything it implies. The concept of the event led us to organize in two parts. In the first part, we'll start by learning what IFLA Europe does at international level from the viewpoint of the guiding documents they draft, but also in view of the documents and guidance they provide regarding trees, and especially trees in the urban environment. Then we'll have some presentations showing us what is happening at the international level. We'll have some ideas, some concepts that are not really found in all professional practice. And in the second day, we'll see actually what happens in Romania, and we'll talk at the end of the day in a roundtable about what we can do additionally and what can we contribute to what IFLA Europe does and what happens at the international level. And the event is organized with the support of 𝐸FLA Europe, the European Association of Landscape Architects, with the support of Arab, our colleagues that join us in many activities along the last years, and Landscape Romania that also helps us put together a series of events and bring information and education to Romania. We also have to mention an L&D distribution that for 3 years have been supporting ASOP in their activity of developing the field generically called urban greening. This being said, I would also like to add that for us, for the Romanian Landscape Artists Association, 𝐸FLA Europe provided a voice by their constant support, and also provided us the possibility to give us our opinion regarding what our profession means at European and international level, and our membership in 𝐸FLA Europe is very important in this sense. So we have here Caterina Gociu, who is the chairman of 𝐸FLA Europe, also the chairman of the Association of Landscape Architects in Greece. Her profile starts from geography but ends up in landscape architecture, and through architecture reunites landscape artistry with the rural landscape. And at this point, well, currently, Caterina continues her activity started some years ago as vice president regarding professional practice, supporting and promoting our trade at international European level. And here I will stop and give the floor to Caterina to say a few words, and then we'll return to Florentina. Thank you.
Caterina, please.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you very much. Can you hear me? Perfectly. Yeah. Okay. So for me, it's a great pleasure to be here today and invited by ASOP, the president and the organizing committee. And I'd like to start saying a few words. What is 𝐸FLA Europe, the goals, and then to referring to the conference. 𝐸FLA Europe aims to establish the importance of all matters relating to landscape architecture as the physical, socioeconomic, cultural, visual, conceptual, and spatial context of all our European communities. And among our strategic goals are to provide sustainable, resilient landscape design, planning, and management necessary for fighting climate change and challenges using nature-based solutions, to participate, develop, and contribute to any discussions related to European urban agenda and other solutions for sustainable urban development, to prepare and promote thematic subjects relevant to landscape architecture, especially related to climate change, demographic change, and act also as a champion in the promotion in the European Union, Council of Europe, and other relevant landscape policies, directives, and agreements. So in order to be referred to today's conference and to what we were doing, and Diana Culescu referred before to that, in our last resolution that was ratified in Granada this year, where our GA took part, and the theme was landscape here and now. And it's so nice to connect your theme today, trees and now, because there are too many things in common. So in this resolution, we find that now is the time for landscape architects to further promote healthy physical and social environment, focusing on everyday landscapes. So the management of everyday landscapes foster better community, climate resilience, and health benefits based on natural resources. This is something that we really believe on that, and that we have to stress our focus. So we believe that our everyday landscapes should be designed by and for people, promoting great equity, social diversity, and protecting our cultural values, improving biodiversity and bringing nature closer to population, and mostly closer to the children, which are the future of tomorrow. So by using nature-based solutions in urban or rural environments creates more effective and enduring and efficient resilience. And by developing green or blue corridors, linking people and nature, encouraging physical activities, reducing ambient air temperature, combating pollution, improving air, and so on. These are the keys to achieve long-term multiple outcomes. And this introduction was based because this is related too much on trees, because trees really constitute essential elements of our landscapes and are really the living artifacts of our local history and culture. And if we go back on FAO and we see what they believe on urban trees, that urban trees can help really to mitigate any negative impacts and social consequence of urbanization, and thus makes our cities more resilient to these changes. However, many problems arise, and these are basically to any false design or planning or mismanagement, and as I would say, loss of respect towards the trees. The urban landscape we can all understand that can be really a very harsh environment, and often does not really even reflects trees' natural growing conditions. And we probably, all of us here, might know that among the common causes of urban trees mortality are related to damaging roots or soils from any nearby construction activities, infection of diseases, improper planting techniques or false design practices, removal or damage during maintenance, and as I would say, not asking the specialist most of the time. So we as landscape architects, we believe that trees should have a special place in any national strategy as cultural landscape elements of special character, which express really a unique sense of place and hold cultural values, are expression of our local identities, and have the ability to tell the story of our place. So it's very much important to place any biodiversity policies, and more specifically policies related to trees or to nature, in any building industry agenda. To improve our social policies for everyday landscapes involving the participation of local people, this is something that we really focus on that. And to encourage any efforts of local administrations to protect, manage, and plan landscapes, basically concentrating on local projects and enhancing public participation. Mobilizing resources also to effect social change, to encourage people to take more responsibility towards their environment, and encouraging also cooperation between landscape architects and experts from diverse backgrounds in different countries. And this is something like that in IFLA Europe, we pay so much attention on that. And this is why among our common activities, through our MedNet working group, we have started to elaborate several themes, and this most recent one are the themes on trees. And what we were trying is to bring together the work of landscape architect, concentrate the efforts, increase awareness, and ensuring a more efficient communication among the different countries in Europe. Here we have two recognized colleagues of IFLA Europe, is that they are going to follow and they are going to elaborate more on the subject, is our chair of the working group and delegate from the Italian Association, Ms. Uta Giorgi, and our delegate from France, Nicolas Watte, who is responsible this year to host the conference and the whole working meeting on trees. So it's gratifying to note that the agenda of the conference covers a wide range of the above subjects, and I wish you really every success and for your productive and successful conference. Thank you, Diana, and thank you all.
Thank you, Caterina. Mulțumesc. Ne bucură că
We are happy that you could join us today and that we can actually see what 𝐸𝐹LA Europe does and what 𝐸𝐹LA Europe strives for and what are the activities you carry out. In what follows, I'll give the floor to Florentina Nan to say a few words, opening words. Florentina is an economist, but actually she has a huge heart open for innovation in terms of environment, and what seems to be a new concept is urban greening. And we know her and we've been cooperating with her, considering that she's been the coordination of the Romanian-Dutch cooperation that actually opens a cooperation in Romania in several layers, amongst them the academia, professional cooperation. And here I will give Florentina the floor to say more. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to join you today. It is a great joy to participate at this conference, but at the same time, I have to say that we have been building this partnership with ASOP for a few years now, since 2019. And on behalf of this initiative, Urban Landscapes Romania, an initiative based on a tool originating in the Netherlands, but one that actually relies on a very strong public-private partnership created both amongst organizations, companies, and academic institutions in the Netherlands, and similar counterparts in Romania. And the idea of such a tool arose in the Netherlands and is adapted to the intention to enter the market, markets that assimilate more difficultly innovative concepts. So this was the starting idea. But in the past 2 years, ever since we've been activating, and we've been doing it in partnership with colleagues from all environments, all walks of life, business, private entities, academia, or public entities in Romania. And there is an openness, and we can see a change and a desire in many cases to change the paradigm Romania used to be labeled with. And there is this need to find creative, innovative solutions for activating the urban landscape. What we do beyond supporting and stimulating and promoting the dialogue that you ASOP as a platform keep very active, which is very good. And the professional branch has to take the lead in taking up new concepts. But at the same time, we also want to make contact between the various branches so that in practice, in terms of trees, we would also be able to carry out sustainable projects. So we had a wide range of activities, from study visits, trainings. Currently, we have a TOT program carried out in partnership with Dutch University between the Architecture University in Bucharest and the Veterinary university, we have an internship program. We have 2 young professionals who are currently interns in the Netherlands, but at the same time, we also created some demonstrative projects to bring reality closer, not at a very large scale, but in as much as it is possible to prove that it is possible. And we are proud to have carried out such projects at the university campus, at the agricultural university in Bucharest, and in front of the architecture university in Bucharest, which has a green wall at this point. But also we lobbied with the public authorities in terms of change of attitude or change of mental mindset. So with these steps, we might contribute to what happens, and we want to see happen carried out more sustainably in Romania. And I believe that the openness with which ASOP tackles both professional development and linking the environment and landscape architecture to what happens in Europe and internationally are major premises, so that major assumptions, so that we can look forward to the future with hope, hoping for success. Thank you once more for being close to us, and I believe that we can do wonderful things together, and I am eager to listen to the debates and to listen to the new ideas we'll put forward in this event, also by our colleagues, members of our initiative, Vandenberg being Brenda Swinkels, coming from one of our companies, Vandenberg, and she's a speaker in the event. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the debates.
Thank you, Florentina. I'd like to mention that in this collaboration with your support, in fact, our colleague Raluca Mihai participated in a professional practical activity in the Netherlands. And this is just an example of results in this collaboration that we already have. Well, I've seen Raluca before being a candidate. She was very enthusiastic, supporting a pilot, and she was the young element who made this possible. So the next step was logical in a way. So this was done with small steps, and sharing the information, I think we will be able to do things better. Thank you. We will continue now with Uta Solzimulman and Nicola Button, who will make a presentation. They will show us what has been done until now within 𝐸LA Europe during the last years, and which are the plans for the future, with very interesting activities for 2022. About Uta, as far as I know her, I don't know if she's a German with a heart of Italian or an Italian with a brain of German. However, she comes from the plastic arts, and she continued in the field of landscape planning, and she works in many countries in this field. I forgot to say that she's the delegate of 𝐸LA Europe for the Italian Association for the Landscape Architects, and Nicolas Vate is the president of the French Association of Landscape Architects, and he always says that he tries to reconciliate the man with nature, which is a difficult step. And regarding the connections we see with the Romanian landscape planning, I think open towards 𝐸𝐸𝐶𝐻, who is mentioned in his presentation. And he says that, in fact, we have to take care how we interact with nature. Now, I'd like to give them the floor to tell us more what 𝐸𝐸 has prepared and which are the future plans. Thank you very much for being here. You have the floor.
No, your mic is not open, sorry.
Please switch on.
No, it is. I was saying thank you very much for inviting me and for the occasion to present the MEDNET working group to you all. The MEDNET is an 𝐸𝐸 Europe working group. It's one of several working groups that work on specific aspects of landscape architecture. In our case, the 𝐸𝐸 Europe MEDNET working group brings together countries bordering the Mediterranean or that share its climatic, cultural, and environmental characteristics. Few people know that the first idea to create the 𝐸𝐸 Europe MEDNET working group has been launched in Bucharest at the airport at the end of a very nice 𝐸𝐸 Europe General Assembly in 2017, where we exchanged a lot of ideas and we had really a nice time. Thanks again for the Romanian Association. It was a very nice occasion. We were waiting at the airport for our flight, some of us, and just chatting about, you know, this and that and about how much we appreciated the exchanges during this GA. And in general, the work in 𝐸𝐸 Europe, how important it is to exchange experiences, especially within the same context of problems and similar situations. And looking around, a handful of people still enthusiastically sharing after 3 days of intensive sharing, I realized that the 6 people gathered together there were all from Mediterranean countries. So I said, what if we get together in a working group, a Mediterranean network of professionals? And they all said, yes, let's do that. You know, a bunch of crazy people with a crazy idea, but that was the beginning. During the next month, we had lots of exchange of email traffic back and forth and sharing opinions and proposing actions. The group was officially founded by these 6 delegates of the 6 countries. The Italian Association 𝐸𝐸 offered to host the first meeting of the group in spring 2018. In this occasion, we defined our mission and outlined the actions we were planning to take. Over the next years, we could welcome all the other Mediterranean countries that are members of 𝐸𝐸 Europe, including Israel and Lebanon from the 𝐸𝐸 Middle Eastern region, 10 countries so far. Soon, we hope, that's what we are presently working at, to have the 2 North African 𝐸𝐸 countries in our group as well. As our president already said, the mission of 𝐸𝐸 is to promote landscape architecture in institutional issues and policies at every level, local, national, and global, to establish quality standards for landscape projects and for professional landscape education, and to facilitate the exchange of knowledges and experiences between the members. The aim of the 𝐸𝐸 MEDNET working group is to optimize the work of landscape architects on similar issues by concentrating, increasing awareness, and ensuring a more efficient communication while saving energy and resources. That's our mission. The common challenges to be faced, obviously, from the landscape architect's point of view, touch on many aspects of the life in the Mediterranean countries. During that first meeting in June 2018, the group has developed an open list of possible topics of interest to all Mediterranean countries, divided into 5 macro areas: environment, climate, social, culture, and policies. From this list, specific themes will be formulated also in the future to be dealt with in depth through research on innovative techniques and technologies. on design solutions, which are the best practices we all know, and regulations or laws that make it possible to operate optimally in the individual countries. Every second year, the group chooses a main theme on which to concentrate research and communication for a certain period. For 2019 and 20, the theme was stormwater management. One of the big problems the delegates of all MEDNET countries agreed on is the lack of to-the-point information for the partners in our professional contacts. Politicians, administrators, and also private clients often do not have the necessary knowledge about the issues that they have to decide upon. Our concern was to present the facts and data regarding stormwater management in this case in a concise and comprehensible manner, with information related to concrete situations that are helpful to professionals as a practical manual and are also understandable by the layman. Regarding stormwater management, for us, the core point we wanted to make very clear was the fact that excess and lack of water during any season are two sides of the same coin and directly related to climate change. This and also concrete formulas about what to do in which situation. With examples and best practices from various countries, all in a 28 pages booklet with the title Designing Change, is the outcome of our work on stormwater management. The information is based on scientific data provided by the group and by experts, but translated into an attractive language by a publicist's writing and editing. I can show you. This is the booklet. I mean, you have seen it maybe. It's very small and easy. I'm not selling anything, mind you. So originally the booklet was in Italian and English. It has then been translated, here we are, into French and Spanish, and is available on the 𝐸FLA Europe website. On demand, the 𝐸FLA Europe Secretariat will send you a printable version, so you can ask for that specifically. The booklet has been widely used by our colleagues in their contacts with institutions at all levels and has been greatly appreciated because of the simple formula. It's not a scientific text. It's nothing that goes too much into the argument, but it shows, how to handle a problem with concrete examples. And as this appreciation convinced us to go on with this kind of work, we are now presently working on a new publication with the same concept, treating our new theme. The new theme of 2021 and 2022 is trees. It's a complex theme with a very wide range of aspects. We have decided to concentrate on trees in the urban and in peri-urban environment, on trees bordering streets, roads, avenues, and water bodies, both in urban and extra-urban areas. We'll talk about everything regarding the needs and living conditions, the rules, the risks, and opportunity of trees in landscape architecture, with the exception of woods and forests. We are not treating woods and forests in this publication. Now, to tell you more about the theme and tell you more about the work that is being prepared, I hand over to my French colleague, Nicolas Wattet, who is presently working for hosting the group's spring meeting in France in 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jutta, and thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon and make a little presentation for the program of our MEDNET meeting in spring 2022 in Marseille, in the south of France. It will be between the 29 to 22 May. And the objectives of this meeting is to start working on the trees, crossing experiences from all over Europe. For the agenda, it's on 4 days. The first day is the arrivals and the starting, and we'll get a meeting at the 𝐸𝐴𝐳𝐷 in Marseille, in France. After we will work a little bit with MedNet Group. And in the evening, we've got Francis Allais, French botanist, conferences, which is very famous with his work on the Amazonian forest and also on the trees in the city. So he will be the first invited for this meeting. For the second day, we'll have the trees in the city. We will stay in Marseille, and the idea is to have experience crossing between French experiences in Marseille with Euromed. It's a new quarter in Marseille, and we will try to know how they put the tree in the city. It's 15 years experiences, so it will be a good reference to think about it. After, we've got Région Sud with a program of 1 million trees in the region. And after, we will talk about the gestion of the trees with someone from Lyon Métropole and the city of Marseille. We'll try to make something like they do in Lyon. And to finish, we've got Mathilde Chaboch, who's from the city of Marseille, that create the chart of the tree. It's for urban regulation to tell to the builders that they can build more if they let some trees on the parcel. So it's a good new experience. And after, we've got European experiences, and we will cross experiences between French and European. For the pause, we will go to experimentation platform of Euromed, and they make 20 little quarter to try some trees, irrigation strategies, microization, to know how we can put trees in the city. And after, we go to a park called the Parc des Égallades, that we tell about the stormwater management booklet, and it's a good idea to see what they do there. In the afternoon, we will go to another park. It's called Jardin du Fort Saint-Jean. There's no tree, but it's a good strategy for plants in the with no water gardens. And on the second day, that's a mistake. For the second day, we go to the peri-urban experiences. We go to a little town between Marseille, Aix-en-Provence, and Toulon, and it's a little natural place between 3 big metropoles. So it's a good place to talk about peri-urban trees. With the partnership of PNR, Natural Regional Park, they make with Atelier Saltus landscape forest management manual, that is something to manage the forest with private properties, and it's a landscape designer that make a work to tell how we can manage the forest and to have some finance advantage for the private properties. We've got after an intervention for the wine and the trees with a big Pibarnon-Bandel estate that make agroforestry seminar. I don't know. Yes, and we close with fire strategies in Mediterranean forest. I don't. I've got two voices. And for the afternoon, for midday, we will make a walk at the Sandboom forest, which is a beach grove, and very particular and in a Mediterranean context, with some people of the PNR that will explain us how do they manage with biodiversity, landscape, and forest management and energy. And in the afternoon and the evening, we will go to visit a wine degustation at Domaine Castelrenoir, and they make experimentation between trees, vines, and maraîchage to go further the agroforestry strategies that make vegetables in the vines, because there is a lot of pressure with urbanity. So how we can manage on the same place vine, trees, and maraîchage. And for the last day, we will make a closing debrief to make the agenda for the next year of the MedNet group, and make some thematics about the planning to work. For the partners, we've got a partenariat with the region, with the city of Marseille, or Méditerranée, and some other French structures for landscape and horticulture. And to finish, we've got a new publication in French that it's called Projet Paysage. And every year we will have one number in both English and French. And the first number of in French and English will be with this this MedNet session in France in May. So we will try to publish it all over Europe, maybe with the help of associations of landscape architects. So we will you can have some feedback from this meeting. Okay, for me it's okay if you have got question, or I don't know what we do.
Mulțumesc.
Thank you. First of all, I want to apologize that being nervous when I introduced you, I forgot to say the most important thing, namely that you present the activity of the MedNet working group in Fly Europe. But I'm happy that you straightened out this error. I wanted to learn how could we follow in the future, except for the magazines you presented, Nicola. How could we follow the MedNet activity? Are there any sources of information beyond the magazine or the journal? And the second question, how could we get involved? I don't know. Our idea with this event is that the conclusions of tomorrow's debate to be sent to your group, considering that the presentation of the national perspective might be of help.
Thank you.
So we have two questions. I don't know if you had.
One is how can we follow your work from now on, and how we can be involved, not only ASOP, but other people that love trees and want to get involved.
Shall I answer?
Yes.
No. You want to answer, Nicola?
You're the boss. You're the boss. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm the boss.
No.
Okay. All of our work is on the eFly Europe website. We have a dedicated page which we try very hard to update, but it's quite difficult with so much work. But we will try hard to do it, because we are talking about so many aspects of trees, And the preparation of this publication, this small booklet, I mean, it's only a very small thing, but it's a lot of work behind, because we are organizing conferences in the different countries, and we are collecting data and scientific information from people like you who are interested or competent on different aspects regarding the work with trees. So you can interact in two different ways. You can see what we are doing, but you are very, very welcome to contribute with your knowledge and your specific arguments, or topics that you use in your work. Shortly we'll we'll post in our website the different aspects that we will be treating, like the ecosystem benefits, like the care of existing arboreal heritage, the proper maintenance questions, climate change and its consequences on trees that are already in place in urban environment, and so many different aspects. We'll collect the data in a sort of spreadsheet. Whatever you can contribute, you're welcome. Second thing is, we are trying to find out with Nicola whether it is possible to open this event, the French event in springtime, to people not only from the Mediterranean group, but who is interested might inscribe. And we are just checking this in this period. And as soon as we have some news about that, we'll post these news in the 𝐸FLA Europe website and also in the newsletter. So you'll be informed about it. Whatever you can contact me. I'll give you my contact email if you have something that directly you want to feed in. I'm a sort of melting pot for information, and I'm giving these informations further to the people who are working on the different aspects of our theme. I will write it on, or Diana, you want to, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to write it here, my email, or do you want to collect the things and then you send it to me from your...
I think we can collect it via our website and our online means, and we can send you like an official position from the Romanian part.
And I'm always available, whatever you want to, any breakout session or whatever you want to make.
Yes, thank you. And also I wanted to ask Nicola, in France, it was signed the European Carta Europeană a Peisajului, Arborelui de Agrement.
So in France, they signed the European Charter of the amenity tree.
For me, it's obvious that actually, if something should happen with the trees in Europe, it has to start in France. But I would love to hear a little bit more about the instrument that you have in France, the Carta Arborelui, la Carta de l'Arbor. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use this instrument in your urban planning? And you have the mic.
Yes, it's open. It's okay. For the chart of the trees, it's for the trees in the city. There is big metropoles in France that take the subject of the morph of the trees, the nature in the city, and to put the trees in urban ecosystems, to make with the tree another place for the nature in the city. And there is a lot of examples and strategies to have this place for the tree in the city be effective. And there is a lot of situation for landscape architects with a natural corridor and ecological place, or with, like I said, in Marseille, they are working with builders to make to keep the trees. Also, if they can make more buildings, maybe we can make higher buildings and keep place for the trees. So it's starting to be a negotiation. There is example in Marseille, in Lyon, that they take these strategies to keep some old trees with all the put in the city alive. Don't know if it's
Yes, thank you. I wanted for you to highlight this idea that is a strategic document that the public administration is developing in order to know what has as an idea what we try to do with the trees, and not the public administration only, but also the inhabitants and everybody that is working with trees. I know the instrument from Lyon. I don't know the card from Marseille, but I was wondering, is there an English version for this kind of document? Because it's very interesting to read one, but the French language could be a barrier somehow.
I don't know, because I speak French. I read it in French, so it's.
I did that too.
but I can have a look to know if there is an English version. I'll try to know in Lyon if they got something. In Marseille, it's a new thing because there is a new political strategy in Marseille until 1 or 2 years. And I have a look in Lyon if I've got something, and I'll give it to you.
Thank you. Vreau să întreb dacă mai este cineva care
I
are...
wanted to ask if anyone else has questions for our speakers so far, if you would like to learn more also about what the MedNet group does, or about the event they are planning in France for next year. You can open your microphones and ask the questions, or write your questions in chat. I forgot to mention this from the beginning. In case you don't have questions, I want to thank our guests. And as I said, we'll return to you with the ideas we'll collect in this event. Thank you very much for your attendance. And now we'll move on to the next topic. We are very well off with the time being a stress factor in every event. I want to remind you again of the fact that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted online. Consequently, your continued participation means your consent in terms of GDPR. And in what follows, I will introduce the next speaker, Brenda Swinkels. Hopefully she can hear us. She has 20 years of experience in Vandenberg. And actually, she's heading the international sales team, which actually means, from my viewpoint, means that she has a lot of experience in terms of what is the desire at international level. I would also like to mention that Vandenberg is actually the company that provided support and the necessary material for post-vertical development. And actually, it is not the only such construction they support. And these constructions make us hope and dream that cities might eventually become green. I would like to mention also that Vandenberg stresses education. For them, it is very important that the public that accesses the products to be educated. And I believe that the presentation that follows will specify a lot in this sense. Before giving the floor to Brenda, I would like to specify that I post chat in the link in Romanian, so the visual support of Brenda, but you can also follow online in Romanian. Thank you, Brenda, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This was my call. Now I can start my presentation. Thank you, thank you. Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Brenda Swinkels, and this next half hour I will talk to you about trees. First, let me start sharing my screen. Okay, the way to successful green projects. Now we are going to talk about this next half hour about what should be done before purchasing trees, what can be done right after the purchase of trees, what can we do for aftercare, and how does successful projects, what do they look like? So before starting a project, it's always very good to check the surroundings and check the available space for trees when you plant it. In these two examples, you can easily see the difference between the space there is. And in both situations, you can use a right tree. If you look at the left photo, you see the big platanus. It's a very monumental tree. It's I think 200 years old. Yeah, it's a matter of opinion if this tree is too big, if you see it so close to the house. I think it fits because of the monumental status, but it's, yeah, a real mature tree gets really wide and very big. So you always have to take into account, okay, how much space do we have? On the right photo, you can see the small avenue, and even there, you can plant trees. If you look at the peach trees they are planting here, you can see it really makes a difference if you put a green element in such a street. So choose your right specimens is what the message is. And a lot is possible. So you have to really check that out before you start. And also the underground situation, the underground surface in Holland, and I think in Romania it is the same. That there's really a lack of space in the underground. There's a lot of cables and wires. Completely, the underground is completely full, and there still has to be enough space for a tree to grow in. So really check your underground space. If there are enough cubic meters, you can prepare for a tree to grow in. And that's really what you need to make a successful project for years to come. So make sure that you are prepared for this and to fight for it, because it's always a big fight if you have to fight with the cable guys, because they think they are more important than the trees. But we really have to cooperate more and more in these integrated projects to get the best success. Another thing is the available soil at the site, and what is available and how can you make it more adjustable to the trees you pick. Are you working with soil of clay, or is it sand, or do you have a loamy soil? All these possibilities are there. And what tree wants a certain soil from its natural habitat. Some trees are better for clay, other ones are better for sand. And of course, you can make everything. You can make an artificial tree pit, but it's always good to see what you have already and to adapt to that. Then it's much easier to let the tree grow. You don't have to do that many artificial things, and of course saves costs. Next thing, water management. Of course, the Netherlands is a wet country. We have a lot of water, and these photos are from the city of Eindhoven. And this was, yeah, of course, in wintertime, a lot of rain was fallen. New project, new houses, and somebody from the municipality made promises to the inhabitants that the trees would be planted before Christmas. Of course, this year there was a lot of rain, so the tree pits were full with water, and yeah, only ducks could swim here, and let alone let trees grow here. So we said, okay, sorry, but this is not the right way to plant trees. We cannot do this. So then the municipality had to go back to the inhabitants, explain why. And I think that is key to explain why you do certain things. And sometimes, yeah, if you look at this, it's horrible. You cannot make anything. You cannot make good work from this situation. So you have to explain people why you cannot plant here, because there's no oxygen or anything in this soil, and the trees will die immediately after you plant them. They will not even get into leaf in the springtime. So check the water and communicate with all the parties in a project. So if it's too wet, the most trees, they die because they are standing in too wet circumstances. Because if the tree pit is too wet, there's no oxygen there, and the growth of roots, they really need oxygen. And where there's water, there's no oxygen, and then the tree will die in the worst case scenario. You also got to check your environmental factors. This example is in Zeeland. This is a province near to a coastal province. So we have a lot of salty sea wind, and not every tree is very big fan of salty sea wind. So you also got to check which trees can stand these circumstances. So salty sea wind, wind, other big buildings which can where you can get strange winds. They're also very important to take into consideration when you determine your tree species. Because, yeah, for instance, if you plant a tree that's very vulnerable to breakage, for example, liquidambar, it can break very easily, the branches. If you plant them with strong winds, you will get very poor habitats. So really have to think about that. Pavement, of course, every tree is buried. If I look in urban spaces. On the left photo, you can see a tree that's almost choking because of the concrete near the stem. And you can also see the damage on the stem because of cars hitting it. So they're really, yeah, they're vulnerable for everything. So you really have to make sure that the tree pit underneath is big enough, and that it will not give too much pressure on the root balls. If you see the middle project and the right one, underneath the pavement, there are big planting areas where there's good substrate for trees to grow in. If you look at the middle one, they have about, I think it was 10 cubic meters soil substrate to grow. And if you look at the Pinus project, they are planted in a tree bunker underneath the artificial surface where the bike is driving on. This whole square is full of tree sand, so it's full with normal sand, what pines grow best on. So you don't see it, but these planting spaces are prepared very well for these trees. And I know for sure, especially if I look at the Pinus project in the big square, in 50 years you will see big pines still growing, and that is what you want. So you can invest in a tree, but it's also good to also look at your tree pit, because it is the combination that needs to work together to get a successful project. Yeah, also important is to manage the expectations of your customer, of your citizens, because yeah, what I told you before with the water management, sometimes the appointments have been made by municipalities, or promises have been made, and you have to keep them, of course. So it's always good to manage the expectations of the people living there. In these two examples, municipalities have contacted the inhabitants to think about tree species, tree sizes, and everything, because they have to live there. And yeah, if you work together, it's for the same amount of money, you can have something that the people like. So don't give them pictures of big trees, and then when you see the project, you see only very small trees there, and that's happening a lot, unfortunately. So that's called management expectation. Online, we have this search tool where you can give in with a filter system on the site, and you can give in the what you would like. So if you would like a tree of about, I don't know, 20 meters high for a clay soil, you want fruits and red autumn color. If you hit the dots, then you get a list of trees that meet these expectations. And it's always very helpful to use it if you have a project with certain data. If you know you have, I don't know, you have salt because of a salty wind, if you can also hit that filter. And it really helps you get a broader view of all the possibilities. I use it myself also, because sometimes you are very used to using your own, the stuff you know, and what you have your personal preferences as well. And this is a very nice tool to get a better, broader view of what's all possible. So it's a tip to get you on the road. Okay, if you look at tree quality, what must good plant material meet? Of course, you need very well-developed root balls, a well-developed crown, no damage on stem and crown, kind of authenticity. That means that if you buy a Quercus robur, it's really a Quercus robur, that you have the species you want. Of course, the size has to be right. If you have the time, go and do the inspection in the nursery. And of course, the balance between price and quality is very important. Well, above ground, you have to check the foliage of the tree, the canopy. And yeah, what is these all examples of all bad examples, to be honest. The leaders are not straight, branches are missing, and the foliage is unhealthy. So yeah, this is bad practice. This is what you don't want. So you need clear leaders, even balanced canopy, etc. So you really have to pay attention to that. But most important is the root ball. The real quality of a tree is in the ground. So it's not above ground what you see, but it is in the ground. You need well transplanted material. And if you have trees that are very often transplanted, you see root balls with very small, healthy living roots. And that's what you see in the photo with Mr. Vandenberg. He's the founder of Vandenberg Nurseries, looking at the root ball. Normally, this is all covered with sand, of course, but we took the sand off, and then you see what you actually want to see. That are these small roots that can very easily adjust and grow again on your project. And you only get this by transplanting the trees a lot. If you don't do that, you get roots that are as big as branches, and they cannot adjust themselves to a new surrounding. On the right, you see our root ball scheme. You see the sizes of the trees, the root ball diameters, how many times they are transplanted, and the weight of the trees. It's all approximate, the weight, because it depends on how wet the soil is at that time. So the root balls are so important, and it's what makes our jobs of people working in green makes it very difficult. because you cannot see it because it's hidden in the sand. Now, of course, we work together with plant healthcare legislation in Holland. We are under control, of course, of the health legislation, and we have these protocols to prevent, to help us make sure that there are no diseases in the trees, that all our trees are with plant passports and the traceability is in place, etc. So this is an organization from our government which makes sure that we have healthy trees and that we only can sell healthy trees. If you look at soil preparation, this is where you see stuff. Yeah, this is a difficult subject because you're working under your hard surface. That was the photos I showed you before. You see a tree pit that is made under the hard surface, so under a concrete, under the concrete. There's always a compromise you have to do with your cables. How can you make sure that you have the right tree pit for that location? So you have to compromise that everybody is happy with what they're doing. Also make sure that the pH of your plant pit is right, has to be between 5 and 7. And the organic matter is very important. If you use soil or substrate with the percentage of organic matter is too high, it will suck up all the oxygen in the tree pit. And this oxygen is very important to let the new tree roots grow. So if for the decay of the organic matter, oxygen is needed. So it will suck out the oxygen of the tree pit, which the new roots need. So you don't want too organic material in your substrate. And also all these tree pits are made, most of the time can be made by civilian companies. And that's what makes it very vulnerable because they are often not used to doing this and not used to making tree pits. They're only used to making all the pavement, etc. So it's a new business for them. So we really have to tell them, inform them, educate them how to do it. If we look at space requirements, then you can see that a tree of bigger than 12 meters, so the highest trees, they need about 1 cubic meter per year to grow. And you can see that the other ones need less. So that's quite a lot. And you really need to think, okay, what is my goal with this avenue or with this tree? How many years do I want it to grow? And then you can calculate how much space you need. And then you have to look for the space underground. And that's not easy because it's very, very busy in urban areas, also underground. A good habitat consists of good chemical balance, physiological balance and biological balance. I already have been talking about this, the nutritional fact, the pH for the chemical stuff. Physiologic, you can think about moisture, soil, air, soil structure, and biological, you think about the fungus, the soil life and the food web in the soil. And this all needs to work together to make a good tree pit and to make it very healthy for a tree to grow in. So yeah, it's quite a lot. So it's good that we know it, and it's also important to know that every situation is different, and so we have to adjust and really inspect the new location very well before making a plan, so we can make the best out of the given situation, and it's not easy. This is an example of substrate used in a project in the north of Holland. They've used the big volume of breakstone. And this is a square where also big, where also big trucks are driving. So there will be a lot of pressure on the trees. And that's why they chosen this breakstone in this instance, because breakstone will not compress the soil. So the air will stay in the tree pits so the roots can continue growing. And you see how many cubic meters are used here. So yeah, the idea of the architects is really that, yeah, these trees can still be growing there after 50 years. So it's massive job that they have done, but the whole square got a new face, and then they took the greening, they integrated it within the whole system, and that's when you can do it. When you're actually doing the whole square, then you think about what is best for your trees and then invest in it. This is an example of breakstone. You can also think about lava or tree sand, all different substrates you can use, depending on the heavy traffic that is on your project. But this is the tree bunker system. You see that happening a lot now. It's all different brands, I would say. But they all do the same thing. You can have your perfect soil in the tree bunker, and the tree bunker makes sure that the pressure of trucks, pressure of traffic is divided and will not press on your roots. And that is what's happening here. So your tree can grow and like it's in a forest, but trucks and trains and trams, they can all go over it without damaging anything. These are, sometimes they do it with concrete solutions, sometimes with plastic solutions, but they all do practically the same thing. And it really does make a difference. If you look at this photo, you can see the difference between a tree with a habitat system and without a habitat system. So you can really see the difference, and it's huge. And it really makes you, if you think about trees for the future, yeah, this is also future-proof, making sure that your tree can grow and does what it is supposed to do. And in this photo, it's very well shown. Now I would like to welcome our, my colleague now, Raluca Mihai. She's a landscape architect and intern now at our company. And she has made a movie for us about the unloading of trees. And I would like to show this to you now.
Brenda,
Yeah?
we cannot hear the...
Este foarte important
okay.
cum îl descărcăm.
Sorry.
At the beginning, we didn't hear anything, and I was thinking that it's not with sound, but it's okay now.
It's coming, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I will...
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Salutare! Înainte de a planta un arbore, este foarte important să înțelegem cum îl descărcăm.
Before planting a tree, it's important to know how we unload it, and you see how we do it in the Vandenberg nursery, so that the materials would not be damaged. The weight of the tree and the package must be distributed so that the pressure should be only on the trunk. With an adequate equipment, we can avoid any damage. So if we talk about the equipment used for unloading, we talk about the chains and bands that offer resistance. There are several categories according to the tonnage. So this is used for trunks up to 30 centimeters of diameter, then 500 and up to 800. These belts are used, and the chains have some grippers that can be used. If there is a too big package, this chain can be extended with another one.
Cazul arborilor mici, descărcarea
In case
separată
of
a
the
unor
small trees, it is possible to unload the tree only with one belt.
În cazul arborilor mari, folosim șufa împreună
In
cu un
case of
separat.
large
Terele de sus se întind
trees,
în valori.
we
Panoul
use
se ajustează,
the
palotul se
chain
dată mai sus decât coroana punții.
so that the package should not be higher than the crown. This is a process of handling and maintenance of the trees. For more information regarding the trees, please visit the website and the YouTube page and contact the sales department. Thank you for viewing. Goodbye.
Oh, now I have to get back to the presentation. Okay, Raluca, help me.
Just a little reminder, I will say this in Romanian. Am pus materialul acesta
I posted the link to this material in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
You can open it from there in case you couldn't hear very well or it was difficult to follow.
Yes, we have this in Romanian, yeah, and the whole presentation is also in Romanian. Eh? Diana, you shared the link, yeah, and also on the website, so everything can be reviewed afterwards. All right, after the plants are unloaded, we will go to the planting of trees. And yeah, a lot can be said about planting of trees. That can be a whole different webinar, a whole separate webinar. But what it comes down to is that if you plant a tree, it's very important that the height of the root ball, the top of the root ball is at the same level of the level of your soil. So don't plant it too deep, don't plant it too high, but that your, what's it called? The wortelhals? The root of the end of the root?
Collar.
Yeah, where the beginning of the end of the stem and where the root begins, at that point is normal to your normal soil, that you don't plant it too deep. That's very, very important. A lot of trees, I see a lot of trees planted way too deep. And then that's really a way where a fungus can appear, and then, yeah, trees really suffer from that. So really keep that into account. Don't plant it too deep. Anchorage, also big item. Make sure that your plant is anchored the right way. Otherwise, it will start to move when there's wind, and all the new roots the tree has made will be broken. And then the tree has to start all over again with making new roots. And that's just a shame, because it's given all this energy into making these new roots. And that, yeah, then it is just a waste of energy of the tree to start all over. So you can anchor a tree underground. You can see that on the left photo. This is an underground anchorage. Or you can do it above ground, and you can see that on the right photo with poles. And I will show it to you afterwards as well. Watering of trees, very important, and I will go further into detail also later in this presentation. This is the anchorage above ground. So 3 poles with straps, and the poles are also connected to each other so that they will keep straight. Very, very important. Some underground anchorage can be done with trees in the size 25, 30 or bigger. And sometimes when there's a project with big winds, we can say, we always say, do a double. Do your underground anchorage and above ground anchorage, just to be sure. We also have the possibility to supply trees in summertime. If we know it, if you know that your project is done in the summer, we can prepare them if we know it in time. In this instance, if we prepare a tree on airpot, we need to know about the half of April we have to have the order to prepare these trees. We will just dig them out, put them above the ground, and then this plastic ring with these little holes has been put around the root ball. The air between the root ball and the plastic circle is filled with substrate. The tree will get water through the dripping hose, the dripping line, and it will get extra nutrition. And then when the season starts, the roots will start to grow in the substrate. And eventually the roots will hit the air, the little openings in the plastic, and it will hit the air hole, but then it cannot go to the right or left because it's made in a special way. So the root will not grow, it will die in the point where it hits the air, but then from the inside out, it will make more roots. So you will get a very well-developed root system. And then at the end of the summer, end of August, beginning of September, you will have the perfect root ball, as you can see on the right photo, where you can see the small white new roots coming out. And this is what will be supplied. So you will not have a plant shock anymore in your project, because you will take all the roots with you. And that's the big difference. If you take trees from a nursery, there will always, from the normal ground, there will always stay roots behind. But if you have a tree from airpot, then you will take all the roots with you and you will have no plant shock anymore. Other ways of making sure that the trees are ready for summer supply are to prepare them with cocoa wrapping or on containers. So if you want a tree supplied just after the planting season, I don't know, in May, for instance, you can have them on cocoa wrapping. That's just for a little bit of development of the planting season. But if you talk about containers or airpots, it's really for later in the summer. But this is all possible nowadays. Okay, watering, that's the most important thing of our job, I always think, because it's very depending on a lot of variables: the type of tree, the size of the tree, site conditions, and the weather conditions. Some of these things we don't have in control, so that's why it makes this very difficult. But a good way to water is using a pouring rim, like on the left photo, or make a little dike on the root ball as shown on the right photo. And this makes sure that all the water really goes into the root ball. If you don't use this, then water can just flow from the root ball into the soil away, where it doesn't do any good to the tree at all. If you use this, then the water is really sinking into the root ball, and that's where you want it. Definitely the first year. So these two examples are perfect for watering the right way in the first year. And it's better to give a big amount of water every week than to give a little bit every day. If you do it every day, you might spoil the tree. And if you give more at one time, it's better to make a search for water as well. Another possibility to water a tree, if you cannot make a ring, you can use a big bucket with a small hole in it, and the water will drop very easily into the soil. And you can fill it up. You just make a big cement bucket or anything or something, fill it up, one little hole in it, and just let it go. It's quite a simple way, but it really does a trick, and it really makes the water go slowly enter slowly into the soil. Works perfectly. Nowadays, you can also see watering bags. We have them from 75 liters and also from 100 liters. So you hang them on the stem. You only have to fill it up, and the rest is done by the system. So it will also very slowly enter the soil. We also have this on the right photo. You can see this moisture retainer. This is like a textile which works like a sponge. So it will make sure that the water is held over there for a longer period of time. But still, yeah, it's not as effective as using water bags or using the bucket or anything. It just holds your water longer around the root ball, which helps a little bit in very dry periods, but it's be careful. What is very important, what I really need to say is you always have to check if you give enough water. You can say, okay, I filled my water bag. They have had 75 liters of water, but really check the soil if it is too much or too little. You check by hand to see if it is enough. If you don't do it, you can be surprised, because sometimes you think, okay, I'm really watering a lot, and then it still really feels like beach sand. So you really have to do more. Yeah, pruning, of course, important after planting. Take a little bit out from the canopy so you will get better growth the first year. And these are equipments you can use, like pruning scissors or little saws can be used. And here in the nursery, we all do it pneumatic with pressure. So your hand doesn't get tired. And of course, people here are pruning all day long. So that's quite different than if you do it every once in a while. But good equipment is very, very important. We do pruning in winter time to get the habitat of the tree in a better shape, and also do summer pruning to get more light into the tree. And yeah, we have groups of people that are pruning all year long. So it's a really big thing for us. Now, I would like to show you two projects that we have done these last years. One is the Trudeau Tower in Eindhoven. I think Diana already told you something about it in the beginning. In Eindhoven, the city very close to our nursery, they built this vertical forest like they did in Milan from the same architect, Stefano Boeri. And they made it now here in Eindhoven as well. And this last spring of 2021, the last trees went on the building, so it's done now, and it's really nice. They are in leaf, and now they are having their first winter, and we're very anxious to see how the spring will be again. So this can be done, and it's about making a statement how important it is to green urban areas, and that's what this building is as well. Other project is the GTC building in Belgrade, Serbia. This is a roof garden on normal ground. So there's a car parking underneath it, and yeah, a park is made in this in between these high buildings, and that's what made it also very difficult to get the trees there, because as you can see, this is the loading of the trees. They're very big sizes, and to get them on the spot, they had to be lifted in there because there was no crane that could go there. So they were lifted over the buildings into the tree pits. And here you can see how big the tree pits really are. So it's a rooftop on the ground. Trees are planted, and you see how many years they can still grow. And this is all the dark green of the dark brown is all growing area for these trees. So it's really fantastic that they are given so much space to grow in. And this is 1 year after planting. This is a photo of spring. The cladicias are barely coming out, but it's a real success. And the project developer is very happy with the result, and he wants to make another one of these buildings. So that's a big compliment that we've all done a great job. Thank you for your attention. I'm a little bit late, I can see, but hopefully it's not too bad. Thank you very much for listening, and I was wondering if there are any questions.
Yeah, we have actually questions. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
First of all, I wanted to say that on your website, there are more information about the projects that you did already, that you are involved in. So people can check your website at any time for more information. Yes. Another thing not to forget, it will be possible to have the presentation in English because you have it in Romanian, but the English speaking part of the participants want also the English version.
Of course.
I don't know if you can send it right now to me in order to upload, or upload it here on the chat, or we'll have it later on our website. Yeah,
I'll try.
You can do that afterwards.
Yeah,
I will refer now to the questions that we have in the chat. And that I find interesting. Where do you find information about the root dimension at maturity, and how they affect the building around if not planted properly? How the trees affect the buildings? I have to make a parenthesis here. In Romania, there is this belief that trees will make a building fall down, you know, because of the root.
Okay.
So it's like a superstition, more or less. I always tell people, look, how many buildings do you know in Romania that fall down due to a root system? But it's very important to know if you have an information source for how big the root systems are for different species. That is, I think,
well, trees generally go no deeper than 1 meter, 120. So they will not go any deeper. Sometimes with one anchorage root, they will go deeper, but the general stays, 1 meter, 1 meter 10. But how wide a root system is going depends very much, on the species, but also on the canopy. So how the more leaves there are on the tree, the more he needs to provide for. So that's how big the root system will be. So it is depending on how well the tree is feeling. So if you have a very healthy tree with a big crown, you will have big roots. But if you have a tree that's standing a very poor stand with almost no leaves or very small leaves, then the roots are also very tiny. But to get back to your question about the belief in Romania, where you think that a tree can fall down when there are trees in the area, there is this solution, and they are called root guider. It's a good root guiding system, and it will make sure that the roots don't go behind a certain point. And if you use these tree of root guidance, then your problem is solved, because they cannot go through it. And if you use that for your foundation of the building, then you can guide the way where the roots are going. And I think that then the problem is solved. I like to think in solutions, not in problems, but it can be, it really works. If you don't want trees to go anywhere, just guide them the other way.
Yeah, the idea of what you say is that there are always solutions. You have to ask somebody that knows about it. And here I will mention also that you already have a representative in Romania, and if people want, they can contact via your website that representative in Romania. And the role of the representative and the role of people that are involved with CEL are also to advise people or to give further information on different topics like this one.
Yes.
Regarding the root system, I would want to add that the third presentation, the last presentation today, it will be about an application that is also estimating the root system diameter in following the species and the dimension of the plant. So stay tuned and see the last presentation also. And actually all the presentation have something to add to the life of the trees. Is that like this how we make the concept of our event. Another question for you is where do you find information about the size and weight of a tree at maturity? This is very interesting because about the size of the tree at maturity we can find in the dendrology books, but about the weight that I'm really looking for your answer.
They ask us that question a lot, and
ni s-a pus această întrebare.
Sorry.
Can I talk?
Yeah, please. I think it's a
I
mic
have something.
open. That's all.
Okay. I get that question are asked a lot, especially on these projects on roofs, etc., where weight's really an issue. And if we look at a tree in total, then the root ball is most of the weight of the tree. And if you think about the wood and the leaves, it's not nothing, but it's not that much. So if you, of course, it's hundreds of kilos, but the real weight is always the soil around the root ball. Mm-hmm. So if I've shown the weight system that we have, size 2025 weighs 250 kilograms. Then 200 kilograms is the root ball and 50 kilograms is the wood. But if you look at maturity, yeah, what is maturity? Is that 50 years? Is that 100 years, 200 years? That's very difficult to say. But that's only what wood weighs, and yeah, that is, I don't know, that's just like a few hundred kilograms, but not. Then you're not talking about tons of kilograms, because that's the root ball. Does that make sense? Yeah, I cannot say an oak of 100 years weighs 1,500 kilograms, but
I was thinking that we have ways to measure or to estimate the weight of the trunk, because people from forestry did this kind of measurements because they are interested on how you are transporting wood, what you can do with it, and so on. But the idea is that that is just a part of the weight of the tree, and actually, yeah, the soil nobody takes into consideration. And
that's what's really heaviest.
And actually, for Romania, it's important to take into consideration the soil with water, because you have a lot of storm water. Yeah.
Definitely. So it's difficult to answer that. But if you look at the cubic meters of wood and then what weighs 1 kilogram, then you can really estimate what it is, because it's just wood.
Yeah. But as we say in Romania, you cannot make pharmacy on that. You cannot really measure everything and know everything, because, for example, the growth of the tree is influenced also by the resources that it has all the time. So that's also, the resources will be seen in the weight of the tree. So
yeah, and I also think if you see a tree on a rooftop, you have the weight of the tree, you have the tree of the substrate, but then it starts, the wind starts to blow, and then your canopy is under stress. That is also totally different weight what you will put on your tree pit as well, huh? So that's something you really have to measure. Okay, what does this tree, with what wind speed, what effect will that have on the pressure on the soil or on the root ball? That's also a weight issue. So it's very complex question.
Yeah, and that's very important to mention in relation with the buildings that have a vegetation on the facade, because actually it's not just the weight of the tree or of the soil, it's also the fact that winds are coming and having problems with that.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for your intervention. We are a little bit over the time, but I think that it was very important to have this conversation. For more information, people can contact you directly.
Yes.
And we'll have also your presentation to give it to the participants. We already did give the one in Romanian. Thank you so much, Brenda.
You're welcome.
Now I will present the next speaker, but I will do it in Romanian, and hopefully you'll find out what I said in English. Howard Gray. He's representing
Howard, Mr.
A project that Brenda actually touched a little bit on her presentation. The green blue urban, it's actually providing a system that can help trees live in a very densely built environment. About Howard, I find out from his presentation that he planted his first tree 45 years ago, and that made me think if I remember when I planted my first tree, and I don't. But this is a provocation for you all. And what I like about what he said is that he's a mediator that is among many actors that is trying to offer a fair chance for every tree to reach his potential, the potential of the species, which is very important because we often plant trees that actually they are growing very big, but we are not providing solutions for them to live and develop well. So Howard, I will ask you to make your presentation now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much indeed, Diana. Thank you everybody for coming on. I'll just try and share my screen now, see if I can make this work. Hopefully that's all showing up now.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thanks very much indeed. Thank you for this opportunity. My passion is that trees should be able to grow to their species potential lifetime. We don't necessarily want every tree to grow as big as it possibly ever could. That may not be appropriate. But what we want is long-term trees that bring us those benefits for generations. And Green Blue Urban has, ever since it started, been at the forefront of finding out what is it that limits trees in their life and their vitality, and what we can do to assist them in their struggle to thrive in the urban environment. And that's what we've been doing for the last 30 years. Next year is our 30th birthday. And we have constantly been innovating based on science, based on our knowledge, to find out what we can do to break down this difference of trees' life in the forests and trees' life in the towns. Because the average lifespan for a tree in an urban area in the UK is somewhere between 10 and 15 years. And that means trees are not ever, they're not attaining their potential, but more than that, most of them are not even becoming carbon neutral. Most of them aren't even able to get to the point where they're paying us back for what we've put them in there. So when we started, we realized this whole issue that Brenda brought up as to irrigation is critical. So the biggest killer of trees in our urban areas is the lack of water. And this is partly because many of our surfaces are actually impermeable. They can't get the rain through them. We're using concrete, or we're using tar macadam, or we're using hard paving, which doesn't allow that water into the ground. So we realized that, as Brenda said, just watering on the surface is very, very ineffective. So we started with a range of subsurface irrigation tubes, manual irrigation still, but getting water round the root ball rather than just relying on the surface. So that's where we started. And then we started into root management. Again, root directors, root barriers, root formers that guide roots away from these sensitive areas so they don't knock down buildings and they don't start attacking our utilities, our water mains, our gas mains. And then we guide them to where we want them. So we say it's a mixture of root management, but also root baiting. We tell them this is where we want you. And in 2000, we realized this whole matter of urban tree planting really centers around the need for decent quality soil beneath our engineered structures. And it's hard to do. Most of our urban soils are quite degraded. So the idea of a load-bearing soil cage that can go underneath our load-bearing paving, our roads, is really vital. So what we do is, in effect, we call it a soil cell. We put high-quality forest floor soil in there that allows the trees excellent access to that soil, optimum rooting conditions. And that was the root cell. We were the first in the world to invent it. And that invention has really changed urban planting all around the globe. And we've continued innovating since then. Bigger cells, still made with 100% recycled material, but less plastic, more soil, cheaper and quicker to install. Moving on, through the using of trees and tree pits as stormwater management, slowing down our stormwater, filtering it through that tree growing soil and discharging it a lot later and cleaner. We're now on to root space, which is the latest in the line of innovation, and I'll talk about this a bit later on, but continuing to innovate right up to now. We're the first company in the world that can guarantee trees for 15 years in an urban environment. And that's an amazing mark of confidence in the green blue urban solutions, that if a tree fails due to the problems with the soil, Green Blue Urban will pay to have that tree completely replaced. And this is so important, that we give people the confidence to plant trees for the long term. Whilst we're a company based in the UK, we have sister companies and distributors all over the world with different manufacturing plants in different countries. We have learned so much from our association with different countries, different climates, different cultures, different tree species. What we find is the same issues arise. The problems we have trying to fit them into these heavily engineered environments, the constraints there are both above and below ground, and the challenges we have in maintaining them. But using this methodology of creating the forest floor environment beneath our hard surfaces is so critical, but so effective. And one thing we find very challenging is that the landscape profession is often the very last one to be involved in a development, and then by the time the landscape architect gets there, all the space has been taken, and the poor landscape architect is asked to green this up for us and try and put a few spots of green in there when really there's not much room. And we've all seen, I'm sure, lovely pictures of developments going through the planning process with lovely big trees and children skipping in the streets. But unfortunately, what's too often is actually delivered is something like this unfortunate road called Cherry Tree Walk. And I guess this is something we all see, where there is no room for trees. Unfortunately, by the time we've got enough properties on there, by the time the highway width is there and the footpath and the gas main and the water main and the electricity main and the CCTV and the street lights, everything else, there wasn't any room for green. And this is a concern to us, because not only does this not look very nice, but it's not a place for great health and well-being for people who live there, and it's not a place that's sustainable for the future in terms of our climate change. And this is a little quote I quite like, that suburbia is where the developer bulldozes out the trees, then names the streets after them. And I guess we can all think of roads like this in our neighborhoods, which have got some beautiful name but don't have any trees. So if we're going to have effective trees in our towns, we have to invest. We have to upfront think about the future. This isn't a new idea. This is Northumberland Avenue in London, one of the main streets that runs from Nelson's Column right down to the river. And a few years ago, they were doing some roadworks, and they found, to their surprise and ours, that when they dug up the curb between the road and the pavement, they found that the pavements, both sides of the road, they're about 5 meters wide, really wide pavements, were all suspended on brick piers with cast iron beams. And they found out that they wanted, when they built this avenue in 1860, they wanted these trees to last for 250 years. So they created these huge soil vaults or caverns, which run the whole length, 0.5 kilometre of Northumberland Avenue, creating this great vast area of uncompacted soil for the trees. So it is a great idea. And it proves what we've been saying, that trees can grow for a good long time if they have the accessible medium. And this is what we try to do now. We try to create these soil trenches beneath the hard surfaces in which trees can share the rooting volume, got access to that good soil to grow to maturity. And we need, as we said earlier, we need to understand how trees root. And this is a computer-generated graphic which gives us an idea how the majority of trees grow in the UK. That most of our roots are fairly shallow. Over 80% of our routing volume is in the top 600 millimeters, with, as Brenda said, very little below a meter, because by the time you get down to a meter deep, you've got subsoil, you've got rock, you've got anaerobic environments, and trees are just like me, actually. They go the easiest route to food and drink. So they stay in that surface area where there's air, there's water, and there's nutrient. And they say, as a rule of thumb, your rooting diameter is about 2.5 to 3 times your canopy diameter, or your rooting radius is similar to your tree height. So it's wide, but it's not necessarily that deep. And as Brenda said, some trees, some species are more likely to have a tap root than others. This is often very much related to your geology. What is the ground like? Is it something that the tree can root into? Because the tree doesn't have a massive big auger in the root drag its way into the ground. Tree roots are adventitious or opportunistic. They just find the easiest way to get to what they need. And it's important when we think about how we plant trees if we're going to get the best benefits. Most trees don't start bringing us the maximum benefits until they're 40 or 50 years in the ground. But once they hit that, they carry on for up to a couple of 100 years before they start going into the senescence mode. But if we start planting trees that only last 10 years and we replace them, we're never going to get more than 20% of those benefits. But what we are going to have is many, many times the cost of replanting. And therefore, we may never actually recoup those costs. We may never get that return on investment. And when we do it properly, we have some amazing schemes. And we've got schemes all across Europe. And in fact, globally, if you look on our website, we've got global case studies. But here's the left picture here in London, Wembley Stadium. This row of trees has only been in 15 years. And yet, if you looked at them, you'd think they've been there 30 or 40 years because they established so well in those good soil conditions within the soil cells. Navy Pier in Chicago up the top in a very exposed situation right on the Great Lakes, very, very windy site. But by giving us the trees decent soil medium and making sure that they've got enough moisture, those trees continue to thrive. They don't get too dried out. And at the bottom there, St. Peter's Square in Manchester in the UK, very, very hard engineered environment, no other green space. But we've got trees to grow so fast and so big that after 7 years, we're having to take out the tree grills or tree grates around the base because the trees have got so big for them. We've even got trees here on the tram platforms by providing that rooting medium underneath the platform. So here we have a typical English oak tree in a typical English village green. Now this tree is a lovely tree. It's a beautiful tree, but it's got access to hundreds and hundreds of cubic meter of soil available for it. It's not being challenged. There's only grass there. That tree has got ultimately pretty much infinite rooting availability. And that's how that tree maintains that canopy. But it is these large trees that give us so many of the benefits we look for. And when we look at the benefits of trees, they correlate very closely to leaf surface area on the canopy. And this is really important. Remember, it's not the trunk diameter that we calculate benefits from, it's that leaf surface area. And it's got to be that way because otherwise it's a bit like trying to work out your IQ by measuring your waist. It doesn't work like that. Otherwise, I'll be as brainy as Einstein. It's what's going on in the top that's so important. So we must try and retain trees where we can. Now, as we know, there are many, many benefits of trees. I haven't got time to mention them all, but we're finding out more and more about them. But very quickly, just 4 I'd like to talk about here. When we start valuing trees, one of the biggest parts of that valuation is actually what trees do to help us reduce stormwater runoff. In these times of climate change, when we're having these more extreme extended rainfall events, trees do a huge amount for us. They hold a huge amount of water on the canopy and branch structure. They take a lot of water out of the ground, and they aid infiltration. As the roots travel through that rooting media, they provide channels for water to infiltrate down to the depth of that rooting. And that's really, really valuable. Over a third of a value of a tree is what it does for us in reducing our stormwater runoff. Trees are also really good hosts of biodiversity. Some of our native trees can support thousands of different life forms. And that's really important because there's a bit of an urban biodiversity crisis as we've removed so many habitats from our urban spaces. Trees are a great way of leveling up people's quality of life. In many of our towns and cities, we find the more exclusive areas, the nicer areas to live, have lots of trees, but the poorer, more deprived areas don't. So we can actually make that leveling up quite easy by leveling up our green infrastructure. And even when we start thinking about how we're going to reuse our retail areas, post-COVID, what are we going to do with our streets? Well, trees can create an ambience and an atmosphere which makes people want to stay longer. They want people to pay more for stuff. And this is really important. And finally, on this page, what trees do for us in terms of urban cooling. Now, trees give us shade, we all know that. But as trees take water out of the ground, pump it up through the vascular structure and out through the leaves, what that does is it makes a microclimate around the tree, which cools the air. One big tree can give us the same cooling effect as 10 room-sized air conditioning units by evapotranspiration. And we've been working really closely with the EU on this to actually prove how much water a tree can evapotranspire. And it seems there isn't any limit to it. The tree will evapotranspire as much water as it has available. And that's really helping cool our cities. And there's a great case study in Medellin in Colombia, where they've planted 8,500 trees and loads of shrubs to cool the city. And they're already achieving between 2 and 3 degrees average summer temperature drop by using nature-based air conditioning. But even what it looks like, what do we want to look out of our windows and see? Trees, healthy canopy cover, or something more like this? And I think we understand that this isn't particularly pleasant, and it doesn't really help our energy generation crisis. So we think about some of our great cities where there's great green infrastructure. And many would know this street in Barcelona. It's a great tourist attraction. It's a green artery in the heart of the city. But look left and right of it. Where's the rest of the green? And this is what's so important, that we make green space available to all. And we make these trees really grow. And when we do it properly, we can achieve great results. This is a city in the UK where we planted some trees in some good soil cells. And in 3 years, we're already beginning to reap those benefits because those canopies are filling out and they're growing really, really healthily. This is a job we did in Scotland, in Glasgow, where they took a main street that was very vehicle, it was a very vehicle dominated, and it had become run down. It wasn't a very nice area. So what they did was they took 2 of the vehicle lanes away, planted trees down the center, and gave those 2 lanes to pedestrians and cyclists, and for tables outside the cafes and restaurants. And it's really made a massive difference. People say they feel safer, they feel more comfortable, they feel the trees operate as a barrier between them and vehicles. But if we're going to get these healthy results, we really have to come back to the soil. And soil is so interesting. Now, Brenda mentioned various different planting mediums. She talked about that they use extensively in Holland. In the UK, we don't have the same ground conditions as they do in Holland, with relatively high water tables, and which change with the tides. So what we find is that the structural soils don't work. We cannot get trees to grow more than 10 years old in Britain in structural soils. So we go back to the forest floor soil. And if you take a handful of your forest floor soil, you find there's so much going on in it. There's more life in a handful of forest floor soil than there are humans on the planet. The thing's teeming with life, but it's pretty delicate and it's pretty balanced ecosystem, quite easily to damage or to kill it. Now, if you look at the elements in soil, we have our aggregates, our sand, our stone, our rocks. We have our organic, anything that was alive and is now dead. We have our silts and our clays. We have our live stuff, our worms, our weevils, our bugs, our bacteria, our mycorrhiza, fungi, nematodes, everything else that's live in there. And we have our water and our air. And in a forest floor soil, the largest single constituent part of it is actually air. On average, around the UK, it's about 42% air and about 10% water. And that's really, really critical, because if that air isn't there, then all those live bits, those worms, etc., can't live. They die or they move out. And the trees don't have a mechanism by which they can take nutrient from the organic volume without that symbiotic relationship with that fauna within the soil. And that's what's so critical. But it's very easy to kill soil. The two quickest ways are either to squash it, to crush it, or to drown it, because both ways create anaerobic environments in which that tree can't take up those nutrients. And it takes only up to 72 hours of anaerobic environments before we start seeing tree dieback. And that's really important. We must make sure that soil is kept uncompacted and kept aerated. We do a lot of research in how trees grow, what they need. And we do a lot of root radar work where we actually find roots under the paving, how the tree is rooted once it has got outside of the initial tree pit. Which way do they go? Do they go towards the road, or do they follow water? And this helps us do our research and development into how we can design the issues out that we face. We've seen this picture on the left before in Wembley, but just around behind the stadium, there's the plaza with some very poorly trees. Now, this is a bit of a sad story, because we have a situation here where we use these two nasty words called value engineering. What it means is cutting the cost. So when the development's all been planned, they cost it all up, and when they start, they try and cut lots of bits out to save the money. And the developer here took out all of the soil structures and the good soil and put them into trees into a structural soil. And every 5 years, these trees die and have to be replaced. And we find this happens so much that we spell, when we're talking about value engineering, we spell it cost deferral. We're just kicking the cost down the road, somebody else's problem. But this time the developer had to take it on, and is now 15 years after he's done it, he's had to do the whole job completely all over again, but properly this time. But we've lost 15 years of tree growth. Now, some people say to us, trees break up pavements, as though trees are designed to cause us a nightmare. Trees aren't like that at all. They're only trying to find what they want, what they need. And ironically, when trees are looking for water in under hard paving, the easiest place to find moisture is on the underside of the top layer of your surface, because where your concrete or your paving slabs hit the subbase, there's always a bit of condensation there. So we find trees put out their fine fibrous roots around, coming out laterally from the root ball, and they find these little areas of moisture. And as those roots grow and thicken up, the secondary root thickening can be very powerful, can just push up paving. So it's not the tree's fault. It's usually what we've done or what we haven't done that makes the tree fight back to try and find it. But by root baiting, by proper irrigation systems, by root management, we've had some incredible successes. Trees been in the ground 20, 25 years, not of movement on the paving, absolutely rigid, because we've managed those roots to a lower detail. As Brenda mentioned earlier, we have below ground constraints. We have issues with lots of different services, and many of these utility companies don't want trees anywhere near their services. And many of them have the ideas that trees try to attack their underground assets. What we say is trees don't have the ability to do that. They don't have a drill on them. trees will find an existing crack or cranny in a drain, for example. They'll put a tiny fibrous root in there. If the tree realizes this is a good resource, it will increase its rooting going into there and thicken it up until it fills up that drain, and you have the problems. But the point is more that the tree's trying to find what it hasn't got. So what we find is by giving good uncompacted moist soil, it reduces massively the chances of roots causing problems. And we've actually published a book that talks about tree pits and utilities and uses examples of where we've done this before, where we've worked around below ground constraints and got trees in even on quite difficult situations. And also, using a cellular system means that it's quite simple to access an asset if it's needed. They just dig down to the soil cells, take the lids off, then they can hand dig to the utility, repair it, replace it, put it all back together again without damaging the majority of the tree rooting systems. I want to mention this case study, which is in London. This is Selfridge's store in Oxford Street, and they opened this side entrance because the front entrance may have been closed because of pedestrianisation, and they wanted 4 large liquid ambers planted outside to act as a gateway or a theatre, give some sense of theatre. And we had to work around over 30 different utilities in this time to fit these trees in, because utility diversions were so expensive. But it's worked really, really well. It's a job in a lifetime, but it's lovely trees and really cheering up what is quite a dull side street. So when we talk about the arbor system, what we talk about is a suite of projects that complement and fully are compatible with one another, which can be used, mixed and matched to suit every situation. We talk first about the idea of the roots-based soil cell systems, which look after the soil. So once we've decided how much soil we need, how much volume we need, we dig the pit, we put a drainage layer in, a mesh, and start locking the legs together. Once the legs are all in, we put a perimeter of lids around, a side mesh, and then stone up, underground guying, soil, root director, twin wall geonet, the aeration ports. We're ready to put a concrete haunch around the root director, stone up the frame for the tree grill, tree, underground guying, irrigation systems, finishing off then with a tree grill, and if necessary, a vertical tree guard, so that everything that the tree needs is provided, including its protection to allow that tree to flourish. So root space is a very simple soil cell system made from 100% recycled material, consisting of U-shaped legs which interlock together, so the unit is one structural complete, so you cannot get any cell moving out of alignment with any other. And then the unique air deck, which is a hollow air deck which allows percolation of oxygen right across the whole of the soil volume. So there aren't any packets, little pockets of anaerobic soil, and the whole thing therefore is accessible to roots. Over 95% soil volume, soil by volume, meaning you've got excellent accessibility to that soil. And we test these for strength. We test them in-house. We sent them out for third-party testing, and sometimes the boys in the yard even have a fun with an excavator. We've started manufacturing this now from reclaimed marine waste, so we're making use of otherwise what was often just dumped at sea, but we believe this is an asset that should be repurposed to support trees' growth to sequester carbon. We mentioned underground guying, holding the tree down by the base. So much more effective to hold a tree at the base than to high stake it, because we get what we call stem rock, where we get a slight amount of movement within the trunk that releases a root growth hormone. And we reckon that we get about twice as much root growth over 2 years with an underground guide tree rather than a high staked one. Now these can be with drive-in anchors, or we use the anchor plate, which actually is underneath the root ball and is held down by the weight of the soil and the tree itself. We have a number of different options on the underground guying. Root management is one of the most important things that we do. We do a single modular root director on the left there, which is basically foolproof, the tree actually grows out laterally, and then the ribs stop the tree roots girdling, encourage them down into the good soil area. We do the flexible root barriers, both in a flat and in a ribbed. We use the flat for where we're creating an exclusion zone, for example, in between a building foundation and the tree, so we don't let any roots go there at all. And we use the ribs if we're going part the way around the tree, there again to stop that girdling. On the right is root form, which is like a twin-walled root director, which you fill the intersection with concrete, stopping any chance of buckling when heavy compaction machinery is being used on the ground around, and still operates as a root director inside. Now, the whole issue of watering a tree can be quite controversial. What we believe is that the root ball, there should be a watering ring around the shoulder of the root ball, about a quarter of the way down the root ball. Now, this means that when we put water in there, the water then flows around those newly emerging fibrous roots and then encourages them to follow the water down. This is very, very advantageous, because the roots are then moving deeper into the ground to try and find their own sources of water, which means they're a lot more drought tolerant. And that also means the trees are a lot more stable, less likely to be wind thrown the deeper the rooting they are. We do different sizes of these leaky pipe systems, but they're very cost effective and very simple to use. The problem with watering on the surface, as Brenda said, a lot of it just runs off. But more than that, superficial watering encourages superficial roots, the roots coming up to the surface to find the water, which means long term they are going to struggle. Now, we do a wide range of tree protection, loads of different grills and guards. Just included a couple here that I thought might be interesting. The 𝐸𝐸 tree grill is a highly popular tree grill because it is completely hidden except for the central aperture. The actual grill spans the whole of the tree pit and over the tree surround, and you can adjust the center aperture to suit paving patterns. But because it's only just the aperture, there's nothing else to show. The castle tree grill is our most popular tree grill, and that's an inlaid tree grill. You can put the stone into it, and as the trees grow, you can take out the segments. And the precast comes with an already installed either resin bonded stone or a granite set, which is permeable, but there's no wet works on site. It's all finished at our offices. So these look like the 𝐸𝐸 grill. You can't see any grill except for the center opening, the castle tree grill with a stone, and the precast with a resin bonded. And we do a wide range of vertical tree guard protection as well, for just to look after the tree until they're big enough to look after themselves. Another area we've moved massively into is using these trees as sustainable drainage storm management options. It's really good. We find if we can combine our green infrastructure, our trees, with our stormwater management, we get better tree growth and we get better control of our stormwater. And this was a project we worked on with a local authority municipality, where they wanted to show the public how we manage our stormwater. So the water is coming in off the road through a curb inlet, runs along the top of the soil cells, drains down through a bioremediation soil into an underdrain at the bottom, and that can then go into a water course because it's been cleaned enough that it doesn't need to go back in the drains. The trees take a lot of that water, and the soil, that microbiological and fungal activity in the soil, operates on the pollutants to break them down or to trap them in such a way that they don't come out of the other end. So very, very interesting system. And this was one we did in Yorkshire, where they extended a road and they couldn't put the water in the drains, so they put it all down through the tree pits and then infiltrated it back into the ground. There's no chance of contamination going into the groundwater because the trees have taken that all out. And we've seen incredible growth on these trees, doing really well. But in the summer, these trees are doing something else for us. We're using these trees for cooling. These trees are taking the water from the tree pit, and 90% of the water that a tree takes from the ground, it actually pushes back out into the atmosphere in this cooling effect. So in our winter conditions, they're looking after the water. In our summer conditions, they're helping cool the town. And it's one of the few things the tree is one of the few things that actually becomes more efficient in terms of stormwater management. The bigger the tree grows, the more it holds on the canopy, the more it draws out of the ground, the deeper those roots are going. So we can easily achieve a 5% extra canopy every year, reducing by 2% our stormwater runoff. Now, the arbor flow system is the arbor flow panel system actually is a tank that surrounds the root ball. Water can run into it through the top grid. It then percolates out through the bottom and distributes evenly over the soil. What this means, though, is even in an extreme storm event, we don't get it flooding anywhere because the water is being held within this tank system and it can overflow through the tree grill. So what we're creating is tree pits that are able to cope with more extreme weather in the future. Then the water has to go down through a minimum of 450 millimeters of bioretention soil to give it enough residence or dwell time to remove our pollutants before we can either infiltrate into the ground or discharge it. And this was a project we did in near London, a new hospital where all the water from the roof, all the water from the plaza area flows through these tree pits, down through the soil cells and out to a swale, which then in an extreme event then charges to the sewer. And we're using these trees. We're finding that they're very, very effective in reducing that heat island effect, more effective pretty much than anything else. And some cities are actually overwatering trees when it hits a high temperature, so to create extra evapotranspiration. As a company, we're very, very conscious of our carbon footprint. We're using recycled material in all our products. We're changing our fleet of vehicles to electric. We're looking for ways that we can make our carbon footprint less in terms of our premises. We're using solar power. But more than anything, to get trees to grow to maturity, get trees to grow that actually sequester the carbon we're looking for. Please have a look on our website, greenblue.com. There's a lot of different technical data there. There's a lot of information, a lot of case studies, not only UK, but globally, that I think you'll find interest. We have free to download CAD drawings, that's both PDF and CAD on the website, of all different sorts of tree pits, from the simplest just tree in a field with a stake up to massive, great sustainable drainage systems. And they're yours free to use if you ever want to do so. But otherwise, please contact us. We're not scary, we're here to help. We really are interested in improving the quality of our tree planting globally so that our children and our grandchildren should inherit a green and sustainable planet more than the one that we actually inherited. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Howard, for this wonderful presentation. It was great to have so many information. We have a question in the chat. Georgiana is asking, what is the lifespan of the product? It is tested for microplastic pollution regarding the soil cell.
A brilliant question. It has been fully tested for microplastic degradation, and being polypropylene, it does not create microplastics. And the anticipated lifespan we're testing it for at the moment is over 120 years. When it is finished, end of life, or the tree has taken up, been dug up, we take the product back and we recycle it ourselves for use in new soil cells.
Thank you for these details. And just more like a curiosity here, using this technology, it's like rocket science, or you don't have to be like very specialized? I'm asking because when we see this kind of solutions in Romania, many times people are saying, yeah, but you can do that only, I don't know, in UK or in France or somewhere where people have more experience. And I don't think that is so hard to use this kind of technology, but I was wondering, what is your position on that?
Absolutely. It is so simple to put together. We call it landscaper's Lego. It is very simple to put together and understand. And if you think about it, all we're trying to do is make sure the soil is kept in good condition. And that's what it is. It's a cage you put together in a modular way. So very, very simple. And we've used it all across the world in many, many situations. It's gone. A lot of it's gone into Poland. A lot of it is some is going into Ukraine. Some has gone into Russia. It's gone into Latvia and Lithuania. So there are many countries that would feel a bit like yourself. But we'd say in the UK, many of these systems have been installed by Romanians for us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your intervention today. It was great, and we hope to find more information in the future. And me personally, I hope that we can celebrate in Romania next year 30 years with for your company with maybe the first project with this kind of technology. Thank you so much, Howard.
All I'd like to say is if anybody in Romania, anybody on this call has got a project where they would like to trial it, we are happy to give product free of charge so that somebody can see how easy it all goes together, particularly if it's a municipality job. We love to support getting better planting in our towns and cities. Thank you very much.
Great to know that. Thank you. And now we'll go to the next presentation, the final presentation today. So we saw what we need to plant trees, what are the technologies, and now after we got the trees in the cities, something has to help us keep these trees and maintain these trees. And that's why we have here Frank Mostrobono from Planet Geo. It's a company that ASOP Romania is already working with and is providing an application that is actually mandatory to have by law in Romania. I'm speaking here about the Green Registry, Registrul Spațiilor Verzi. I will say about Frank that he likes to provide the support by this through this application for the clients in order to develop best practice. I really like that in your presentation. Thank you for being here. So take it from here and we'll see what question we have for you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Good afternoon, everybody. It's morning for me. I'm based in Denver, Colorado in the United States, although I do spend some time in Boston and travel around quite a bit to Europe and whatnot. So as Diana mentioned, my name is Frank Mastrobuono. I work for a company called Planet Geo. Mainly I work in urban forestry software. I'll teach you all about our company in just a second here. Just to start sharing my screen and we can get started. I think everybody can probably see that okay, but if there are any issues, just let me know. We'll go ahead and without any further ado, get started. Oops, there we go. I guess just a little bit about our agenda today. Here's what I had planned. I'll provide a brief introduction of who I am and kind of a little bit about my background, and then we'll go straight into talking about just kind of an overview of GIS software. We're going to start really basic and just make sure that everybody's on the same page about you know, the background of what we're going to be discussing. We'll talk a little bit about what is a tree inventory. I'll also briefly touch on something that you may have heard of, a tree canopy assessment. We'll just take a quick minute to distinguish between the two of those and talk about how each is used. And then we'll dive right into how to do a tree inventory. And you know, there's always the ideal scenario, what the folks will tell you, and then there's really the real world. And I'll just kind of share some of the common obstacles that we see different managers come up against and how they deal with them and how to best ensure that those obstacles don't remain persistent throughout the span of your program. And then we'll just talk about, okay, once you do have a tree inventory, how do we report and share results? And then we'll break out into questions. I think we've got about 45 minutes allocated towards this presentation. So each of these little headers will be about 7.5, 8 minutes. So if you do have any questions as I'm talking, feel free to just put them into the chat. I'll certainly get to them by the end of the presentation. So just a little bit about myself and my background. I got my career started conducting tree inventories and surveys after college. Worked on a U.S. Forest Service project. for a couple years, and then eventually just kind of worked my way up to be the urban forester for the state of Rhode Island in the United States. It's about a little bit less than an hour south of the city of Boston. So I did that for a couple more years, eventually went back to grad school, just kind of decided that having worked in state government, I really wanted to be where cool things were happening in the environmental realm, and noticed that even when a state government wants to do something cool, they go off and hire a private company to do so. So that's where I wanted to be, and that's how I actually wound up at Planet Geo. I actually met our CEO at the Partners in Urban Forestry conference put on by the Arbor Day Foundation, and just stayed in touch. So here I am. So now I work supporting the company's international partners and clients just to do the same, to help improve their efficiency of their programs using software. We do spend a lot of time getting to know our clients' programs and really what unique challenges they may be facing, and we can kind of custom tailor workflows for them and their departments based off of what their needs are. Just a quick little bit about the company. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The company is called Planet Geo. We've got urban forestry, software and consulting products and services based in Colorado, offices around the US and partners around the world. We do produce tree and asset management software. That's going to be mainly what we'll focus on today. We do also conduct tree inventories and assessments for any clients. We typically do that work in the United States, but that's when a city will contract us to go out and actually collect all the data needed to produce a full tree inventory. We do provide geospatial mapping services, so typically looking at satellite data and satellite imagery to break down urban areas and to get an understanding of where their tree canopy is and how that may or may not be contributing to other challenges the city's facing. And lastly, we do have an urban forestry consulting arm where we write urban and community forestry strategic management plans as well as maintenance plans. And again, this is a little bit more of a customized service. So the software suite that I mainly work with, there's 4 different software platforms. There's Tree Plotter Inventory, which is used to create a tree inventory, which we'll definitely be checking a lot of today. Tree Plotter Canopy, that is going to be an easy to use visualization tool for tree canopy assessments, which I'll just define briefly today. Tree Plotter Parks, which allows us to manage not just trees, but any other type of park asset or park location in the same way that we would manage a tree inventory in a map-based setting. And then Tree Plotter Jobs, which is actually our new online map-based proposal software for private tree care companies. So just a real quick overview. What is a geographic information system? Well, put quite simply, it's exactly what the name says. It is any data that we would want to put on a map. We can look at points, that's point-based data like a tree in this case, or it can be a line such as a roadway or a trail to hike on or a stream, or it can be a polygon, which would be a particular area, or it can actually even be pixelated images, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. But so if we have these little points or these polygons or these lines, and we want to collect pieces of information on them, it doesn't really matter what the information is that we're collecting. If it's information and we can put it on a map, the geographic information system helps us do that, commonly referred to as GIS. Another example too is that GIS systems, they can also, once we have this data in them, typically report on this data. The reports can tell us, you know, the distribution of the data, the quantity. We can look at some more qualitative data too, such as the condition of a tree. And we can also bring in reference layers. I have a little bit better of an example later on, but you can see that these reference layers, the pink and the green lines, those are our park boundaries and our public rights of way boundaries. So that's just can help us provide a little reference as to, is this tree one that's privately owned or is it one that's managed by the city? Most modern platforms today will allow you interoperability between the desktop environment in your office, between a tablet or a mobile device while you're in the field. Our platform Tree Plotter is cloud-based. So that means that, a manager can be sitting in their office and there can be field staff out in the fields collecting data or performing maintenance to trees and logging all of the tasks that they're doing. And they can watch the dots pop up on the screen or the data change in real time as that work is being done. So Tree Plotter itself is 100% cloud-based. It's all stored on the cloud. There's no difference between an Apple and an Android version. It's all going to be the same software. The interface may be slightly different on the mobile version just to make things easier. Our menu gets condensed, but that's about it. So really the tablet, because we're humans and our fingers are a bit bigger and we're collecting a little bit data, seems to work a little bit better. There is a data hotspot connection that we can use to our phones or to a little Wi-Fi device. Those help tremendously. But if not, our software platform does have an offline data collector. No matter what software platform you might be looking at, this may be an important aspect for you. It's probably pretty important to go and get an understanding of what the cell phone service might be like in your area if you're going to be using a cloud-based system. If it's going to be spotty, then it's a good idea to make sure that you can use an offline data collector. So I'll just touch briefly now that we know what a geographic information systems are. What's the difference between a tree canopy assessment versus a tree inventory? Those are two terms that are very commonly used in this. So a tree canopy assessment, it uses satellite data. It's really a top-down look at what's going on in a given area. And in most cases, that's a city. A city is going to be most interested in obtaining data. So that's really just quantitative information that we're getting. We're going to be saying, okay, in this given area, how much of this land cover is tree canopy? How much is open field space? How much is impervious surface like roadways or buildings? And how much might be open water? We get that type of information, and this gives us a look at the overall canopy, and it gives us a land area that's covered by canopy. It does not distinguish individual trees, but it can be a really important tool to get an idea as to what trends might be present in the city, where certain health issues might be present, like asthma as a result of a lack of tree canopy cover, and how we can focus our planting efforts in the future to better target our goals for our programs. So tree inventory is a little bit different. That requires manual data collection. That means someone actually going out into the field physically, assessing the tree, collecting the data, and putting it into the software. And that's really the bottom-up analysis, what we like to say, because it's very bottom-up. You're starting with the tree, and you're starting at the ground and looking all the way up. And then once we build the tree inventory, we get an idea of what the whole city looks like. And this provides us quantitative as well as qualitative information. That quantitative information being, we have 100,000 trees within the city, for example. And then qualitative information might be 25% of those are in good condition, 40% are in fair condition, and another 30% are in excellent condition. It looks at many different facets of the tree, the urban forest, such as the species composition, the health, the relative age, so on and so forth. And again, so just to give you a visual, a tree canopy assessment, we're going to be really looking from the top down, whereas the tree inventory is going to be from the bottom up. And I've just got a quick little GIF here that will explain kind of how this process is done. It's mainly done using GIS software. There are some more advanced companies out there. We work with one as a partner that are using artificial intelligence to process this satellite imagery data. Currently, that's only available in the US, but we're working to bring that available for mainland Europe. So really all that's happening here is you can see this given section of this city. And what we're doing is we're just switching back and forth from the raw satellite imagery to the land cover classification data. The tree is the dark green, Any other vegetation that's not a tree will be that kind of lighter green. That tan would be open space. Red would be buildings. Gray would be other impervious surface, and the black would be roadways, and obviously the blue is water. So once we do have this information, what we can do is break this down by kind of like geographic boundaries in the city. And in most cases, that's just neighborhoods. In the United States, we use our census block neighborhoods because there is a lot of publicly available demographic and health data that comes along with our census groups. So now what we can do is, again, geographic information systems, any data that we can put on a map, that's what it's used for. That's all we're doing here is we're taking this demographic information from our census data, and we're pairing that up with our tree canopy data that we've gotten from our own satellite imagery analysis. And then what we're able to do is we can further in our exercise isolate neighborhoods based on whatever analysis we want to make. What I'm doing here is just kind of moving the sliders back and forth so that way you can see how that works. But we can look at, the tree canopy, how has it changed between a couple of different years, and maybe show me just the neighborhoods that have low tree canopy cover, because that's typically where we want to focus our efforts. So then where does the demographic data come in? Once we've isolated a certain number of neighborhoods, we can bring in really any type of data. So in this case, we're looking at, people in poverty and a health index. So typically what we're finding is that if a neighborhood has a lower average income, then it will also have lower tree canopy cover and therefore higher instances of diseases like childhood asthma. So once we bring that data into the software, we can give managers a tool that will allow them to set these priorities and know which neighborhoods in their city they need to focus on if they want to create a more equitable distribution of the natural resources in the urban environment, and also make a positive impact to negative health trends that might be present in the city. All right, so let's take a deep dive into tree inventory software. So the basics of tree inventory software, GIS, it's map-based, it's cloud and mobile compatible. We can either collect the data for a tree inventory. Some cities might have a data set that they have from maybe 5 years ago that they want to update, or maybe they've been doing a good job keeping it updated with any other type of software. This software should allow us to do that. And it should also provide us some analysis and work tools, as well as aid us in visual storytelling. So just a kind of quick little GIF here again to demonstrate the types of information that we would collect in a tree inventory. We're going to be visiting every tree in the city, or sometimes it's every tree that the city is responsible for. So trees that are on private property, the city may not be able to do anything with that, so we're not really going to collect information. These would be specifically about city managed trees, but you can see we've got a map here, plenty of dots on the map. We're color coding by the species, and all the types of data we're collecting on the tree would be the species, the diameter of the tree, its status, its condition, its height, so on and so forth. And then, what we'll also do is once we collect all this data, this software is going to automatically report on this. Some software packages out there, you have to produce the reports. Sometimes you even have to export to Excel and make the graphs yourself. In Tree Plotter, the software takes care of all that for you. And actually, all of our reports are responsive to any filters you might set in the software. So you should be able to filter down to, show me all of my American beech trees, or show me all of my trees that are in poor condition. And then all these graphs will update to reflect only those trees that you've set in your filter. So it really can provide us a way to drill deep into the data and to get a better understanding. So why would we perform a tree inventory? Sometimes people ask that question. Why can't I just manage my trees? I see a branch that's hanging and we send a crew out to remove it. Well, first of all, if you're managing 100,000 trees, how do you know which one needs to have a branch removed tomorrow because it has a dead branch hanging over a cafe table versus which one you can remove in 3 weeks or a month. Most software platforms do allow you to provide a risk assessment, and that will give you a score, and we can prioritize the work based upon the score. That's certainly something that a tree inventory can help with, but there is a significant liability problem. And this example is from the United States, where yes, we have a reputation for being a litigious society, but accidents do happen, trees do fail, and unfortunately, sometimes that means they impact property or even people. So the city of San Diego, very big city in the United States, tree fell down and hit a citizen, and the citizen sued the city, saying that they should have known about the dangerous condition of the tree. A reasonable inspection would have revealed that it was prone to failure. Another citizen also had the same thing happen, $7 million judgment against the city. Tree inventory will cost you way less than $7 million, I assure you. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes people do surmise to these impacts. So it's a very real need to stay on top of the maintenance needs of the urban forest. And, you know, at the end of this article, we learned that the city of San Diego did not have a tree inventory. They did not know about these dangerous trees, but they're now currently conducting an inventory. And I guess the lesson is here, don't do this. Don't wait until you have a major situation to go out and find a tree inventory. So and create a tree inventory. So what are the best practices that we find here? This is what the textbooks will tell you. They'll say, hey, look, you know, if you have a problem or if you have a management challenge, identify what that is, and then go out, talk to your city managers, talk to your politicians, get the political opinion on your side, generate public awareness. And if you do all that, you know, you should be able to figure out what your goals are. And then the tree inventory will help us understand the problem. So, you know, we'll be able to convince our politicians that this is a worthwhile investment. Talk in just a second about how that doesn't always work. But, you know, what you typically do then is, okay, everyone says, all right, we're going to conduct this tree inventory. So you go ahead and conduct that tree inventory. You get the results, you analyze the results. Those results will tell you, you know, where are our challenges? What do we need to address? What do these challenges affect? And what's causing it? And how do we move forward? So then that will enable you to create a response plan. You can outline all of the maintenance that your crews are going to do for the next 3 years. Prioritize that maintenance based on risk. That'll tell you how we're going to address any problems that we may have. We'll remove trees as they're reported, or maybe we're going to do, like I said, we're going to prioritize by risk. Sometimes there may be treatment options if we have trees affected by a particular pest or disease versus removal. Sometimes maybe we want to remove trees over a certain height or a certain level of maturity, and those that are in their healthiest span of their life, those will stay and we'll treat those. We're going to have to consider a budget and our sources of funding when we're considering all these things. Sometimes it might be cheaper to remove all the trees and replant than to do treatments. But again, it's just important to consider your goals, to act on your plan, and to reevaluate your plan regularly. If you have software, you should be able to have a good finger on that pulse. So in the real world, swaying public and political opinion is hard. Leadership supports what they know. And if we don't have information, problems are nebulous. So if you don't have a tree inventory and you're trying to convince your politicians that you need a tree inventory, but you don't have any information to convince them that you need a tree inventory, where do you start? Roadblocks become a reality in this sense. So what we've seen most companies and most private industries and most municipalities all across the board have a lot of success with is something that I'll just introduce in a second, called a bite-sized approach. But the reality is that public opinion sways political opinion. So if we can create public opinion around something using good information, then that will influence political opinion. So information is key, but we don't have a tree inventory. So what do? Well, you get it however you can, and sometimes that means you're not getting a tree inventory. There are options, there are software packages out there. There's one that's made free by the US Forest Service that anybody in any country can use. That will allow you to go and conduct a representative sample survey. You can go out and not do an entire tree inventory, but survey parts of the city so that it's representative of the whole. And you can get basic statistics like 30% of our trees are in poor or dead condition. Well, that right there is just one statistic that can say, hey, we really need to get on top of this problem. It's time to create a tree inventory. So if you have to do this on a tight budget, there are free tools out there. You can go and take a survey yourself, and that'll at least give you some basic information to start a conversation with. And then what we could do is we could take a bite-sized approach. So this should be an expanded circle. It looks like my slide got condensed a little bit here. But really, what we've found is that some cities have had a lot of success with this bite-sized approach, which means if they invest in good information, and that may mean just doing a tree inventory or a tree survey themselves briefly using, these basic tools, that will allow them to obtain better results, which then demonstrates the value of having good information to politicians and decision makers and members of the public, so that we'll invest in good information again. And we saw this with the city of Colorado Springs in Colorado, where they had resistant leadership. They didn't have any budget or anything like that. And what they did was they went out and they did a representative sample survey. It took maybe a couple of weeks. They didn't spend a ton of money on it. They got some basic data that they were able to take to the members of the public and to their politicians and say, hey, we have some issues here that need to be addressed. The next step would be for us to get a tree inventory. So then they got a tree inventory. It convinced a lot of people that it was a very valuable investment. Then they wound up getting a tree canopy study to look at, okay, what are the trends in different neighborhoods? And then they wrote an overall management plan. So they started really small with a really resistant leadership, and now they have absolutely everything that they might need. So what we can do is, again, just obtain basic information and just put it out there on your city website. You can put a press release, talking to local news media, going to city council meetings, or outreach events, or anything like that. And then we'll just continue to provide good information to advance the conversation. We can state our opinion, but that's not going to be anywhere near as effective as if we are the scientist that's just providing real data about a problem that everyone is facing. And so then, just again, an example would be that representative sample survey. There's a point-based survey that's done with a tool called 𝐸 that's again available for free from the US Forest Service. These tools are online. If you just Google 𝐸, you'll be able to find them. And sometimes we do studies in a pilot area that 𝐸 logo's blocking it there, but that would be just taking a smaller area of the city, and maybe you do a tree inventory in just one neighborhood. That's another approach that we see, and then we'll expand that to the whole neighborhood. So this tree inventory software is going to just give you, again, basic information, just a little quick or deeper overview as to what this would look like. You'll just click on a map to add a tree, and then you'll get this data form. This will be the data that we're going to collect on our tree. We can actually customize this form in our software so that we can create new data fields. If a new pest arrives to town and we need to track the progression of that pest, we can do that. We can also just improve efficiency of members working in the field. And we do also have the ability to restrict access to which members of your team, or if you're working with subcontractors that are going to be doing the maintenance, we can actually specify which access they're going to have to which data fields in the software. So if you have some notes for your internal team and you don't want members of the public or your private company subcontractors to see any of that, it's very easy just to restrict that permission. And when they log in, they're not even going to know that those notes fields exists. So once we do have a tree inventory, we can also do inspections. We want to update this data, and maybe we do maintenance on a particular group of trees, and we want to log that maintenance. So we can log just routine inspections, someone driving by the tree saying, yep, everything's okay, or hey, I found a dead branch, or I found a new pest. We can update attributes. So like, hey, this tree's grown by 5 centimeters in diameter. So let's just log that. And we can have a log of all the times that we visited these trees. We can view these, we can print them out, we can set reports. We can also have notifications that remind us if we need to inspect a certain group of trees every year. We can set reminders for that to do that for us. Like, so there's all sorts of add-on modules that we can put into the software too. TRACK is a tree risk assessment qualification. That is from the International Society of Arboriculture. That provides us a number or a score that represents the risk that this tree poses. And the higher the score, the more urgent this tree's need is, and we can prioritize our work based off of that number. We can also do a CTLA appraisal method. There are many appraisal methods. One that's popular in Europe is COVAT. There's a couple other. QTRA is another risk assessment. We do have that are based on iTree. That provides us an indication as to like how many trees, or sorry, how much money does this tree save us per year? How in energy savings? How many gallons of stormwater does this tree take up every year? It provides us data like that. So if stormwater or carbon sequestration or economic benefits are an issue, then we can certainly get that information from that tool. This is just an overview of what the filter looks like. If we want to say, you know, show me all of my oak trees that are larger than 20 inches in dBH, where are they? We can just set this filter and then we'll get an image on the map that gives us that breakdown. And then we do have the ability to import reference layers. I know a lot of landscape architects here in the virtual room. This can be important for determining the impact that a particular construction project might have to trees. Once we have inventories on a property, we can see the tree inventory, and then we can actually bring in CAD files to show us exactly where a planned construction project might be, and whether or not that's going to input a tree. The software can also draw a ring around a tree. Don't have them in this image here, but that ring around the tree will represent the tree protection zone. And that's just the area of ground around the tree that shouldn't be disturbed in order to prevent that tree from being damaged. And so if this construction were to overlay on any of those circles, we'd know, hey, maybe we want to move this deck. In this particular example, I can tell you from knowing the data that the trees don't impact, the construction doesn't get impacted by trees. Actually, the closest one is just this tree right here. And the ring like barely scratches the outside of what looks like this deck right here. But so this can be really useful for projects like that. Again, you know, we do have all these data analysis tools that provide us graphs on pretty much anything we'd like. This is a look at those eco benefits. That's kind of how this breaks down: stormwater, property value increases, energy savings, air quality, and carbon. It's a pretty unique add-on module. It's really cool. And then we do also have work order management. If you have a more complex program with multiple subcontractors, maybe some internal teams, how do we assign work to crews, track the progress of that work over time, report on that, track costs, so on and so forth? Well, that's done with our work order management add-on module. It allows us the ability to add work records to work history to trees, to create new work records, to add those to a work order, so on and so forth. Ultimately, we can report on all this information. How much in the last year did I spend on removals versus pruning versus plant healthcare versus planting, so on and so forth. And then ultimately, we'll be able to share this information because if we're doing this in a city, it's good to get members of the public involved. It allows us to visualize data. We can facilitate collaboration between departments. We could do storytelling. We can engage the community. We even have a new module that allows cities to embed a simplified map into their own website that members of the public can access and just navigate. There's just a couple examples. This is a City of Dallas or Texas Trees Foundation. We're just providing basic information on species and the eco benefits. We also can display that canopy data in that same platform. And it's just an idea of what it looks like. We do also have a crowdsourcing module. A really unique example is we do have a client in Belgium right now that's using the crowdsourcing module to crowdsource possible planting locations all throughout Belgium. The name of the group is called 𝐸𝐸𝐴. A good guy by the name of Rand Stalens is the heading up that. This is the city of Palo Alto. They actually have a different approach. They use the crowdsourcing module. They actually pay to furnish a private landowner with trees. So they pay for that tree to go on private property. And then the owner of the property has to take care of that tree. And they have to log their maintenance tasks in this tree. So that way, this program is funded by a grant. At the end of the year, the city manager has to take a report of all the trees that got all the maintenance and report that back up to the grant provider. And so the software is used to do that in this case. And in this case, you know, the citizens are just logging in using their Facebook account or their Google account or just their regular email address, and they can log, you know, their watering. Hey, I watered this tree. It also allows the city manager an opportunity rather than, you know, having to dig through stacks of paper that all these citizens send in. He or she can just say, well, hey, I see that John Smith at you know, 123 Oak Street hasn't watered his trees in 2 months, so maybe I should give him a call. And so this is a screenshot of that 𝐸𝐸𝐴 in Belgium. All of the gray sites are different possible tree locations. And as you can see, this is mainly in Dutch, but we do have the ability to translate into different languages, Romanian being included. Just a quick example of some of the reports that the software can spit out. We can do full reports on each tree or condensed reports on multiple groups of trees. Work between different departments. Again, we can import reference layers like gas or electricity lines, so on and so forth. And that's it. So I'll open up to questions. Got a little bit of a late start, ending on time. So hopefully there's still some time for questions. I see a couple of little chats in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, then please let me know.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to highlight that, as you said, the application is also translated in Romanian right now, so people can use it in Romanian. I also want to add that Romania was the second country in Europe, if I'm not mistaken, using this application. That we already did in Romania crowdsourcing activity for 𝐀𝐈𝐂 Park, and that actually our association is using the application to make inventories for several historic gardens that we are working on different projects on awareness and education. For me, the most interesting aspect in relation with the viability of the application is the fact that you can use it web-based, so it's not a conflict on any software or any equipment that you might use. As you said, it's very important because this is written in our law in Romania, law on green spaces, law 24 on year 2007, that we will talk about more tomorrow, is that this type of instrument, it provides quantitative but also qualitative information, and it's very important that you can see an overview of the information of the over the years and what did happen with each tree, and that helps you to get a better management. We don't have any question in chat, but I was wondering if you can tell us more on the monetization of the ecosystem benefits, how this is working, because I think it's very important to let people know how you find the data, and for example how the application is estimating the root system where it can be, and how you do that not to affect it. So this is the question. Can you tell us more about the monetization of the ecosystem benefits?
Sure. Yeah. So as we all know, trees do provide benefits to the landowners and to the public. It's always been very difficult to quantify those benefits. About maybe 20 years ago, the U.S. Forest Service sat down with the intention to provide city managers a tool to be able to have better conversations around the value of trees. And that's what the Eco Benefits tool is about. Actually, they've just recently updated the science, and we're working with them right now to integrate the tree plotter with the newer science that is being released. And this builds upon the existing formula, but the existing formula, what it basically does is it equates everything back to the biological function that the tree is able to provide. But it takes, there's a few different pieces of important information, such as the species, the location, the size of the tree, its health, and the land use. So those are the 5 most important pieces of data that we have on each tree. From there, what we're able to do is the software, the original formulas, they calculate the biological function that the tree is able to carry out based upon the leaf surface area of a tree of that species, of that size, condition, excuse me, and any given land area. Or a given land use. So a tree that is next to a large commercial building is going to provide a lot more energy savings during the hot summer months than a tree that's just next to a park. So that's why the land use is important. But so we have the biological function of the tree, the ability for that tree to perform respiration, to take in carbon from the atmosphere and produce oxygen, to uptake stormwater from the roots and to process that and hold it, so on and so forth. So based on that information, we can get a pretty accurate idea of what a tree of that size, condition, land use, so on and so forth is going to be able to carry out. That's how that formula works. I think you did have a second question about the root zone. Is that correct? And did I answer the first question sufficiently?
Yeah, I think you did, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the tree protection zone, that's a very well-established formula. In the United States, basically, we say for every inch of diameter of that tree, we need to create a ring around that tree in feet for the tree protection zone to minimize disturbance in that area. So if a tree is 10 inches in diameter, then that means that we're going to have to draw a line or a ring around the tree that's 10 feet in radius from the center of that tree. And that should protect most of the critical roots for the tree, so that if we were to park a steamroller outside of that area, it wouldn't impact the tree. Whereas if we were to leave that steamroller or other heavy piece of equipment on the roots inside that area, it's probably going to ultimately lead to the decline of that tree. So that formula can be customized. In each tree, actually, there's what we call the tree protection zone ratio, and that's just the ratio of the diameter to the tree protection zone. We can change that as things evolve. So with every tree, if one tree might be more sensitive and you want to protect it a little bit more, we can just increase that ratio a little bit. Yeah, so to conclude, actually, you use the information based on research and on methodology that is already well known in US. Yes, yeah, the tree protection zone formula is very well established. Yeah.
Thank you. I will stop the discussion here because we are over our time. Sorry for that. Thank you for being here and for providing so much useful information. We hope to see you with other occasion also. We want in the future to present what ASOP did already with the help of your application, and hopefully we can do an event on that also. Thank you. Now I will switch to Romanian. Vă mulțumesc tuturor că ați fost astăzi alături.
Thank you all for being here with us. We will meet tomorrow again for the second part, when we will discuss about what is going on in Romania, and we will have probably some surprises. And finally, we will have a discussion to see where we are now as regards the urban trees and the urban trees, and how we can contribute to what is going on in Europe and to adapt it in Romania. Thank you very much for being with our team today. I wish you a nice evening, and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.